Ahoj všichni, it's Jen from Dream Prague giving you an American's perspective on life in Prague, Czechia. If you're a recently arrived immigrant to Czechia, you might not be aware that these billboards you see everywhere you look are not in fact selling classic timepieces, lip injections, undershirts, and whatever the hell that is. Nope, these are all political billboards because 'tis the season to argue with your relatives at the dinner table. Now in America, we do that over Thanksgiving. But this year, the Czechs get to spend the Christmas season debating politics with friends and colleagues because the Czech presidential election is just a little over a month away. So in today's video, we're going to compare the Czech and American presidential elections and answer some interesting questions you never thought to ask about the Czech presidency. And then in part 2, we'll pick a winner. So be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when that video goes live. Tak, first, the basics. The Czech president is elected every 5 years. The American president every 4 years. Any citizen over the age of 40 can become president in the Czech Republic, while in the US that age is 35. The American president cannot be president for more than 10 years. That's 2 4-year terms, plus 2 extra years if he became president due to another president leaving office early. The Czech president can be president multiple times, but cannot be president more than 2 consecutive terms, which is why President Zeman, who has already served 2 terms, is not running in this year's election. Though he could certainly start plotting his 2028 campaign. Please don't do that. In the US, to officially launch a presidential campaign, candidates must raise $5,000, or spend $5,000, or roll around in $5,000. The details are unclear. After that, they must file an online form. Easy peasy. But if they want to actually win, they have to get the backing of one of our 2 main political parties. I'm sure you're familiar with these guys. Yes, unless you cozy up to one of them, adopt all of their policies, and kiss their rings, your chances of being elected American president are 0. In the Czech Republic, to become a candidate, they don't have to have the support of any political party. In fact, they don't even have to be in a political party themselves. And they don't need a bathtub of cash, though that never hurts. What they do need is signatures. To qualify as a candidate, a presidential hopeful has 3 options. They need to obtain signatures from 50,000 citizens, 20 deputies, which is basically like our congresspeople, or 10 senators. Even though it seems like you can't buy milk in the Czech Republic without signing some official documentation, signatures to be president are harder to get than you'd think. On November 25th, the 21 presidential hopefuls submitted their signatures and only 9 passed the threshold. And thank God for that, because nobody wants this video to be a 4-part series. As an American citizen, even though I live in the Czech Republic, I can vote in all American elections from the comfort of my flat in Prague. Every US state's rules are different, but in my state, every time there's an election, I receive in the mail this voting card, which I fill out and sign and send back to my state. I can vote as soon as I get my ballot, or I can vote on the same day as the election. And as long as it's postmarked by the election date, it will be counted, which is insane because I cannot think of 2 slower postal services than the Czech and the American Post. Those are the only 2 I really use, but they're really slow. That's why I prefer to take a photo of my voting card and email the photo to my state, who then sends me a confirmation that my email vote is counted. Czech citizens who live abroad can vote, but only in the parliamentary and presidential elections. And they have to do so at a Czech representative office in that country, which means a consulate. And that is tough. There are only 4 Czech consular offices in the entire United States. If a Czech citizen in Colorado Springs wants to vote for Czech president, that road trip will cost at least $550 in gasoline and about $45 in rolling. If you're a Czech in New Zealand, you have to go all the way to Australia to vote. There are over 300,000 Czech citizens living abroad who I'm sure would really appreciate the ability to vote by mail like I do. And some political parties, like the Pirates and Stan, are in favor of this because they'd see their numbers go up. Parties like SPD and ANO aren't in favor of this because they hardly get any votes from abroad. In fact, in the last presidential election, over 90% of the votes from abroad went to Zeman's opponent, Jiří Drahoš. So you can see that even these administrative parts of voting get real political real fast. And if a Czech citizen wants to vote for Senate, they have to haul their cookies all the way back to the Czech Republic to do so. Czechs with permanent residency abroad cannot vote in municipal elections, which honestly makes sense to me. I always find it weird that I'm voting for like the local dog catcher in a town in America where I will never live again. Now, I am 99% sure that Czechs can't vote at all by mail, even if they're vacationing in another part of the country that day or just can't make it to the polls for some reason. If I'm wrong, please tell us in the comments. Or you can tell me, how do you vote if you're, let's say, vacationing in the Krokonoše Mountains that weekend? I think Zeman had to get special permission to vote from the castle when he was on death's doorstep last election. Is that a privilege extended to normal citizens or just the ones who live in castles? Speaking of ways of making your life easier while living abroad, it's story time. Brought to you by NordVPN, who really saved our Saturday night. So Hans and I were traveling in Germany, and we couldn't wait to see the Americans dominate the Netherlands in the World Cup. But we couldn't find the game on any channel. In fact, it wasn't playing on any German channel. Even the sports bar down the street, who was hosting a bunch of American expats, couldn't access the game. Fortunately, Hansa and I have NordVPN installed on all of our devices. So all we had to do was log on, hit Quick Connect, and it connected us to an IP address in the United States, which enabled us to watch the United States lose to the Netherlands 3-1. Which is not the point of my story. The point of my story is, if you haven't installed NordVPN yet, what are you waiting for? Not only does NordVPN unlock geo-restricted content, but its threat protection function protects you from ads, from trackers, and from malware. With only one subscription, you can use NordVPN on up to 6 devices. Simply click the link in the description box below to get a 2-year plan with an exclusive deal and 4 months for free. It's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. When you do, you help me support this channel so I can keep making you videos about my favorite European country, which at this moment is not Germany or the Netherlands. If you're an avid follower of American politics, you might want to speak to a professional about that. You know that some of the US presidents have been elected even though they received fewer votes, sometimes millions of fewer votes than their opponents. How does that happen? In the US, our esteemed founding fathers created a complicated electoral system based on states' rights, slavery, and a Ouija board, which means that sometimes the person who gets the most votes does not end up being president. This is called indirect voting. I made a video explaining it here. I recommend viewing it with some paracetamol and a few shots of Slivovitz. The Czechs, on the other hand, recently implemented direct voting, meaning the president is elected by the direct vote of the people, instead of by the parliament. But this has only been the case since 2013, when the people chose as the face of their nation this guy. Twice. Hey look, it's not a beauty contest, okay? In the US, everyone votes on a Tuesday, which is absurd because, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people work on Tuesdays. The lines at polling stations can be hours long. Many workers can't afford or aren't allowed to take so many hours off to stand in the hot sun or the freezing cold. And some states even have passed laws forbidding people from handing out food or water to those waiting in line for hours. No, this is not about American politics. Breathe. Breathe. Czechs have the opportunity to vote on 2 days, Friday and Saturday, this year on the 13th and 14th of January. And in the Czech Republic, Friday's essentially a weekend, so nobody's at work. Here's where the Czech system gets interesting. The Czechs have 2 rounds of elections to select their president. These rounds are 2 weeks apart. So in round 1, everyone votes for 1 candidate. Out of this year, it will be 9. So if any candidate surpasses 50%, they automatically win. If no candidate surpasses 50%, then the top 2 candidates advance to a runoff in round 2 on Friday and Saturday, January 27th and 28th. I imagine things get a little chaotic in that 2 weeks between rounds, with the remaining 2 candidates running around the country, hugging babichkas and chugging beer and kissing babies like their careers depended on it. With all the billboards and political chatter on the news, it sometimes feels like the Czech presidential election has been going on for an eternity. And I even hear Czechs say they don't want to hear any more. They're done talking about politics all the time. But here's what they might not realize. Andrej Babiš, former prime minister and one of the frontrunners for Czech president, announced his formal candidacy on October 30th, just a few weeks ago. That's 75 days before the first round of voting. Former American President Donald Trump just announced his candidacy 720 days before the 2024 presidential election. That's 10 times the amount of pain we Americans suffer and foist on the rest of the world when it comes to our political circus. So, Czechs, you have my sympathy, but you don't know from pain. American 5-star General Dwight D. Eisenhower once said, "Any man who wants to be president is either an egomaniac or crazy." And he ought to know because he was the US president when he said it. So in part 2, I'll introduce you to those Czech and Slovak lunatics who are candidates for Czech president, and we'll pick a winner. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when that video goes live. Uvidíme se příště. Ahoj!